G'day everybody, how you all doing? I hope you're all enjoying the new year and that it's going alright so far, because this probably won't coming out till February, hopefully. Now, I want to ask you all something. Have you ever heard of Beast Wars?
Beast Wars!
I want you to raise your hand if you have, and I would imagine that a lot of you would have at least heard of it and have got your hand raised right now. And I want you to keep it raised if you have heard of Beast Wars 2. The sequel, I think, I'm not too sure, of the original Beast Wars. Now, I imagine that some of you would have dropped your hands, although some of you would have probably heard it before, and that's fine. And now I want you to keep your hands raised if you have heard of Beast Wars Neo. I imagine a lot of you would have dropped your hands by now. And don't worry, I had never heard of it before I even made this video anyway, so we were all sort of sitting in the same boat here. Now, you're probably wondering why I'm asking you all this and sprung this pop quiz up on you. Well, it's because there's actually a game that ties these three series together. And it's a long one. It's called Duel Fight Transformers Beast Wars Warriors Strongest Decisive Battle. So I'll be calling it Beast Wars Battle for short. So before I actually get into the actual game, I'll quickly give you some background information. So this came out in Japan in 1999 on, I believe, the Game Boy Color, and it featured characters across each of these three different series, including Optimus Primal, Cheetor, Megatron, Leo Convoy, Scuba, Megastorm, Galvatron, and I hope I say this correctly, Gildart, as well as some others that we'll get to later. Beast Wars Battle is just your 2D traditional fighting game, you know, like your Street Fighters and your Fatal Furies, you know, that type. Kick, punch, shoot, whatever you can do until your opponent is defeated. But we'll get to all that later, because first I've got to tell you actually how our iconic Maximals and Predacons actually got here. Alright, story time. On the planet Gaia, which, if you don't know Beast Wars 2, it's the distant future version of Earth. It's Earth that has been without humans for a very long time, and there, a powerful energon quartz, which has wish-granting abilities, is discovered in a mysterious ruin. Now, apparently this quartz is a prize for the strongest life form, which causes a battle to ensue for the last Transformer standing to have their wish granted. Very simple, I guess, and straight to the point. I don't think it exactly explains how they all got there. I know that I think Megatron gets just teleported in there, hence why I'll explain later on, but he's the final boss. But that's pretty much it. There's not too much to it. Fight, you win, you get wish. So now that I've actually delivered the story, we can now actually go into a bit more of the actual game. So, in Beast Wars Battle, there are multiple game modes and mini-games to play, but for the moment, we'll just focus on the single battle mode. In this, you get to choose between 6 Transformers from the starting roster, and then once you've selected a character, you can then choose between Scuba, Megastorm, Gildart or Cheetor as your first rival. With each win, you will move on from one character to the next until you face Megatron, who is always the last main boss. And if you are able to beat Megatron, you then have the chance to face one of the 2 extra characters. But we'll focus more on that once we get there. So defeating Megatron and the extra character, your Transformer then gets their wish granted, whatever that may be. So each character begins the round with 3 health bars, and the goal is to deplete your opponent's health or to have more health than them at the end of the round. Continuing this for a best of 3. Being 2D, it initially doesn't seem like you can do a whole lot, but surprisingly, there are a lot of lengthy move lists and strategies for each character, by using the traditional A and B for attacks with a certain direction to perform special moves. Each character can also dash across the screen, jump, block attacks by holding down the opposite direction of what you're facing, and, of course, transform.
Transform!
Which in turn gives them another set of moves and characteristics to change the style of the battle. On top of all this, each character can also fire an unblockable projectile that slowly makes its way across the screen. And you want to avoid this because being hit by it causes the player to be stunned for several seconds or until they are hit. However, this doesn't work on Galvatron and Megastorm in vehicle mode at the cost of their speed, but we'll get to that when we go to the actual characters. However, each character can only use 3 shots per round, so if you use them all up in the first battle, you won't be able to use any until the next round. But more on that when I talk about the characters individually. So if you don't want to play single mode, you can play team battle, where you can select up to 3 of either the Maximals or the Predacons. You can't mix and match between the 2 factions, you've got to choose one side or the other, and you select up to 3 of them to battle. So both teams have their starting characters, and then once one is defeated, it gets swapped out for the next one in the roster. And the one that won keeps the health and gains a little bit extra in preparation for the next fight. And you win by defeating all the characters on the other team. So pretty straightforward. So now it is time to dive into each of the playable Transformer characters, and personally I have been very excited to talk about them all. So please excuse me if I spend a little bit of extra time on them in this part of the video. But quickly before I actually talk about them, I have to mention that if you go into the options menu, you can read about all the different moves lists for each of the characters, as well as receive tips and tricks from both Starscream and Artemis, which I think is very, very cool. Alright, let's take a look at our good old lion, Leo Convoy.
コンボイ改めライオコンボイ参上変身
Leo Convoy is the leader of the Maximal Space Patrol throughout the entire Beast Wars 2 era, who is considered to be honest and selfless in both nature and combat, with a variety of arsenals and weapons at his side, as you'll see. He boasts an excess of fast light attacks to keep the opponent off balance, and has access to things like the Leo Shot, the Leo Tooth, the Leo Tempest, the Leo Typhoon, the Leo Tornado, the Leo Cannon, the Leo Through, and the Sky Cannon. On top of all of these moves, there's also the BP gauge down the bottom, which is filled by blocking or by charging it. And by using it when it's full, you can access Hyper Mode, which increases your speed and attack, or you can perform a super move. So it must be noted that you are briefly open to attacks when performing a super move, which allows your opponent to quickly counter attack if they are quick enough. So Leo Convoys are the Soul Impulse, where he literally lets out a flurry of attacks, as his Planet Burst, which allows him to fire cannons from behind his lion's mane. In addition, there's a thing called the Desperation Attack, which is if you're in the red health bar, you can do the inverse combination of a super move, and they'll let you do a much stronger attack. So Leo Convoys is the Morphing Raid. Alright, now we've got Scuba the Squid.
Scuba 変身
He may seem to be the quiet type, but he's definitely one of the more capable Maximals under Leo Convoy's command, being able to infiltrate Predacon bases and just literally appear out of nowhere. Some of his attacks include his whip, the electric shock. He's also got the Scuba Thrust, the Sarumarang, Smog, Dive, Tail Whip, and the Scuba Spiral. His super moves include the Vulcan Rush, which brings out the Taco Tank, as well as the Kraken Knock, which is just an ultimate pile driver. And finally, his desperation move is the all-powerful Scuba Dancer 99.
The way those two reacted, that's no natural life form. And if we're talking unnatural life forms, then we gotta be talking about just one thing. Robots in disguise! Cheater! Maximize! Time for this cat to pounce!
Alright, if you've seen Beast Wars, you definitely know the cocky, cool cat Cheetor, with little experience but a whole lot of attitude. His main moves include a variety of sniper shots depending on where you want Cheetor to aim, as well as the rolling assault, passing sand, phantom arrow, surprise through, and surprise attack, making Cheetor great at keeping your distance, as well as some additional light attacks to follow up to keep your opponents from fighting back. His super moves include Last Resort, which lets him shoot a literal hail of bullets directly onto your opponent, as well as Delta End, which is just a ferocious assault. He also has his Take This desperation attack.
So we thought we'd drop in.
Optimus, maximize!
Optimus Primal. What more can I say other than...
Well, that's just prime.
But quick aside here, I have to mention that when you play against Optimus Primal in the whole lineup, he is the most aggressive character you fight other than Megatron. He will literally just walk up to you and he'll just spam the grab move. It's almost impossible to hit back if you're not fast enough. So his attacks are a little bit slower than his other Maximals, but he definitely packs a punch, literally, with moves like the Cyber Blade, Plasma Cannon, Giga Attack, Convoy Driver, Hammer Knuckle, Counter Hammer, Megaton Hammer, and the Grappling Megaton Slam. He also has his Zetsu Convoy Driver super move, which just looks like something out of WWE, and the Gigaton Bomb, which is what I assume to be the original Hulk smash. And lastly, he has his God Ascension Desperation move. Galvatron, or the Emperor of Destruction. He is here and there is nothing that we can do to stop him. While in his drill form, he takes reduced damage and is immune to the stun of projectiles at the cost of having a slow speed and not being able to jump. No amount of rocks, lava, or betrayal can stop this triple changing terror. So, Galvatron's attacks are not too fast, but he has some pretty fierce moves like his Twister Axe, which allows him to toss his axe like a boomerang, the Death Ascension, Cross Revenge, which is a counter move that immediately stops attacks and punishes the opponent, Soul Drain, Murderer Vulcan, Gaia Tornado, Kill Needle, and the Crush Drill. He can also resort to his super moves, including the Chaos Pleasure, which allows him to summon a Dark Power, and his Gaia Crush, which literally drags your opponent underground with him. And if he's desperate, he will transform into his dragon form to perform the Infinite Ray attack. Now we'll move on to Galvatron's younger brother, Megastorm.
こうなったらトランスフォーム
Megastorm, who craves for power that his brother has and will do almost anything to get it. Armed with his mega cannon, he can literally obliterate his enemies if it manages to charge in time. He is also immune to the projectile stun like Galvatron in his tank mode. So, his attacks are a little bit faster than Galvatron, but they still pack quite a punch regardless. With his F-Mine, Critical Hammer, Spark Cannon, Knuckle Bazooka, Maximum Shoot, Sting Mine, Cyclone Cannon, and the Storm Pass. You can also tap into his supers with the Megaton Bomb, which just lets him pull a giant bomb out of his ass, as well as the Assault Ray, which fires an orbital strike onto your opponent. His desperation move is Final Operation. Alright, so now we've got Gildart.
ラガーマグマトロン様大流弾変身
Don't know much about him unfortunately because I haven't actually watched Beast Wars Neo, but from what I've seen, he's the field commander under the Predacon commander Magmatron, and he's considered a great tactician and a fearsome warrior for any Maximal to face. So, Gildart's moves are a little bit more complicated, as I've noticed that most of his moves require 4 button presses, which often takes a fair bit of setup, but if you can pull them off, he can be quite the powerhouse. He has moves such as his, now excuse my pronunciation, the Airstrike Knock, Zweit Press, Dread Blow, Viet Reflector, Proton Wave, Deuteron Tackle, Triton Through, and the Teraton Press. He can also summon black holes with his super moves, including the Megatic Black Hole and the Black Hole Cluster. And lastly, he has his desperation move, Changing Drain. So, our final main character is none other than Megatron, who really needs no introduction.
You've got to enter the rest of the code. I can't do it in this form. How sad. No Predacon will become a Maximal prisoner while I rule. Megatron, no!
So his attacks are powerful and surprisingly quick, with moves such as the Buster Shot, Tail Thrust, Evil Impact, Evil Slash, Tyranno Press, Megaton Press, and the counter move Tyranno Revenge, as well as the Tyranno Stamp. He can also perform his super moves, including the Laser Buster, which is literally just shooting a rally of shots at your enemy, as well as the coolest one yet, Night Raid, which allows him to summon all of his Predacon allies to join the fight like it's a Persona finisher. And if all else fails, he can always fall back on his Destruction Ray. Now, if you go back to the beginning of the video, you'll remember that I mentioned that there were 2 other characters you can play as. Well, you do so by defeating Megatron, and then depending on which difficulty you're on, you'll get to challenge either Star Upper or Artemis and Moon. So we'll first focus on Star Upper. Who's an intergalactic boxing and kickboxing champion who prefers to challenge enemies one-on-one than be out on the battlefield. So this crazy kangaroo has attacks like the Magnum Blow, Crazy Knuckle, Stealth Blow, Star Upper, Rocket Punch, Drop Kick, the counter move Start Revenge, as well the Beast mode version of Start Upper. He also has his Start Upper Kai super move in both Kangaroo and Robot mode, which deliver devastating uppercuts that destroy his opponents. He also has his Desperation move of the Furious Start Upper. So, as I mentioned, there are also the characters Artemis and Moon who you can play as.
私たち惑星ガイアの見張り番よ。ガイアで起こったことは全部見通せてもサイバトルンを助けることはできないの。よーし、このムーンに任せるわ。ムーンに何ができるの？ムーン変身。ムーン大丈夫、任せておいてムーン。あ、待ってよ。まったくもう。
In Beast Wars 2, they are observers within the moon orbiting the planet Gaia, where they are tasked with observing and ensuring that no one uses the planet's Anglemoy energy for evil. I hope I said that correctly. So unlike the other Transformers, Artemis is used for the robot mode and Moon is used for the vehicle form. Also, it is very funny to see that most of Artemis' moves involve throwing or smacking others with Moon. And if you've seen the show, then poor Moon. So, Artemis's moves include the Artemis Hammer, Moon Slash, Moon Attack, and the Artemis Slash, with her super move being the Artemian Hammer, which gives her a supersized hammer for a mega whomping. On the other side, Moon's moves include the Moon Attack Kai, Moon Head Attack, Gloomy Moon Punch, and Moon Heal, which restores 2 bars of health. His super move is also the Rapid Rabbit, which allows Moon to throw copies of himself endlessly at his opponents. And combined, their desperation move is the Moon Caliber. And that is all of the characters here. So now, with that all out of the way, and the main game aside, we've got some extras to look at. So, on top of all this, there are also the extra mini games that you can play, the first of which being Quick Draw mode. This mode has both players trying to be the quickest draw in the West by performing their shoot move in the fastest to defeat their opponents. This can get rather difficult as the rounds continue, as at some points it requires you to be faster than 0.04 seconds to defeat the opponent. If that doesn't suit your style, you can also play Punch de Go, which allows a player to punch a rock as fast as you can before the sun sets to unearth a hidden gem. And by beating it, you can then play Guard de Go, which allows the character to block 100 incoming projectiles without being hit. Beating this, it allows you to play Guard de Go 2, which is an endless mode version of the original. So, after Punch de Go and Guard de Go and Guard de Go 2, there is also another game called Run Beast, which is a very different game as it changes into a vertical view, so you can control your character in their alternate mode in order to avoid pits and traps until you eventually reach the end goal. And you want to do it as fast as you can. So, Fight Beast is a slightly different version of its predecessor, and it's also the most fun and also the most frustrating. In this version, you have to make it to the end goal, but you have to fight bacteria-like enemies all the way up until you reach the end, having to avoid pits, water, and all sorts of other enemies. If you make it to the end, there is also one more giant germ that you can defeat before you have to complete the stage. So, you've got all the previous characters you've got, as well as a few others, and each one has their own different bullet that they essentially shoot out to destroy the bacteria. And some of them have projectiles that curve in the direction that you want to move. Others wobble about across the screen. Some deal double damage. And others have perks like Scuba, since he's a squid, is unaffected by rivers. As well as some others who have some flying abilities so they don't get into rivers and pits. So there's also a couple of secret characters in this that you don't get to play in the main campaign. This being Starscream and BB.
逃がさないわよ。ビビ合体モード。ラジャー。
So you unlock Starscream by entering the code RIMU that you see about midway through the Fight Beast level. And Starscream, being a jet, can fly over all rivers and pits, and he can fire 2 bullets with no reload, providing a greater coverage of bullet spread. In addition, if you get a high enough score, you can unlock BB in the password screen. He also flies and shoots 1 big bullet at a time from his Gatling launcher, which deals double damage to 3 cell bacteria, as well as being able to hone in on the enemies, so it's a sort of like a lock-on missile. But if there's more than 1 bacteria on the screen, the bullet can get a bit confused. Now, there's a reason why this game frustrates me, is that there's meant to be 3 other secret characters, but I cannot for the life of me get them to work. This being Skylar, DJ, and Icard. And I know that they exist because I went and found the sprite sheet and I can see that they are clearly on there. But for some reason, I cannot play them using like the exploits described on like all of the forums I've found. So I've even found the soft dip switches and I've triggered the mystery one that says everyone says it's unknown. I can't get it to work, but I swear that that 3rd dip switch makes Fight Beast harder. I don't know if that's right though, but the worst thing is that I can't even show it to you because I can't find a single video or image of them actually being in Fight Beast. Like there's nothing. I've searched, I've even tried searching it in Japanese and it doesn't work. I don't know where to find it. So if you can get it to work, then please let me know what I'm doing wrong or upload it yourself because I'm going to start going crazy because it's like some giant conspiracy. And there's also one other thing that's mysterious about this version of the game, is that there's a black bacteria near the very end just before the last boss. And in the end screens, it says, do you meet the black bacteria? So I'm not sure if you do enough damage, it does something or what. I've even just tried not shooting it and going up to and flying into it. Doesn't work. So that's another mystery about this that I don't know about. Still a lot of fun though. So on top of those extras, there's also the Let's Make a Seal feature, which would allow you to print off your favourite stickers from the game.
Hasta la vista, Starscream.
So, overall, this is a very fun game that I'm very grateful to have discovered, and I will probably continue to play it on and off as I have still not been able to beat the normal mode with all the characters, and I haven't finished hard mode yet either. Especially as it takes concepts from all 3 of the different series, especially since the AI version of Leo Convoy is actually Copy Convoy, which is a really nice detail as they could have made him literally any other colour. It is also great because the game doesn't take itself too seriously either. I mean, just look at those convoys dancing. I'm also glad to see that I'm also not the first one to talk about this game, as it truly is something special to see that other channels have been able to give their own opinions on it and see what their thoughts and takes are. And after all, thank you all so much for watching this. This has been months in development, and I'm so glad that you're all finally able to see it. So, I'll see you all next time then. Bye bye.
Adios, muchachos!